Today I'm going to take you through the process that I took to turn this checker piece with a little crown on it from Maker World into our own custom one with our logo on it. And we're going to print it out using resin printing. Welcome back, folks. This one is pretty straightforward if you are familiar with Orca Slicer. Now, we are using resin printing to print these out, but we need Orca Slicer so we can customize this checker piece and get our own logo on it. So let's jump into the computer and see how it's done. Now, before we jump into this, I did want to point out this is listed under Creative Commons Attribution License, so you are allowed to remix it, use it for commercial purposes, but you do need to give credit to the original designer. So these are the original checkers, the file that I used in the previous video on the resin printer. They're from DaVinci 2000 on printables. I will put a link to this in the description below if you want to check it out for yourself. So all I recommend doing, at least for this particular project, would be to download the single checkers body. Now it will have the hole on the top of it to fit the crown. So what we need to do first is fill that hole. So I have the checkers body. And if we zoom in real close, you can see that there's that cutout for the crown. So we need to fix that. The first thing that I'm going to do is go up to the top, lay on face, and just lay it down on that bottom face so we have the top part to work with here. And then I'm going to change the checker color. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to go to the color painting tool and fill that interior there, just so I have a little bit more contrast to see what I'm working with. Then I can right click and add a primitive. We're going to add a cylinder and kind of get it centered over the part. We can come up to the top and scale it until that scaling looks like it's covering up the majority of that crown there. Then we need to shrink it down, but you'll notice it's also sticking to the bottom there. So we're going to get it pretty short. And then what I can do is right click on both of these over in the Objects tab and assemble them. You'll see if I just try to move this without assembling them, it just wants to snap back down to the plate, and we don't want that. So then I can choose our cylinder, and we'll go up to the Move tool and just drag it all the way up until we're kind of aligned with the top there. So we want to get this pretty close to perfect. That looks about right. And then I'll turn this to black, see what we're working with here. You can just refine this until all of the outlines are gone. And then we can go to Assembly, right click and hit Mesh Boolean, and that'll combine the two of them together. So if we hit Slice, you can see that they're all one part now, and we've got one assembly. So that's it for the checkers portion of this. The part that I had a little difficulty with and had to go back and forth a few times was the SVG. When I imported my SVG file, you can scale it down. We don't need it to be quite that big. These are going to need to be assembled as well, so we can drag this up and kind of get it in the right spot. All right, so that's basically in the spot that I want it to be in. Now I want to change this to a negative part, and this will work fine for FDM printers. You can see it's already kind of cut out that spot there. If you wanted to go ahead and print this just as it is, that would work just fine. What I want to do though is mesh it together like we did with our assembly here. So I'll right click it, hit Mesh Boolean, but you'll see there's an error down here, unable to perform the Mesh Boolean operation for one reason or another. It has self-intersection, or so it claims. And what I found is this error is caused because of the way we exported our SVG. So if I go ahead and open up my Mountain Maker SVG here, I want to get rid of everything that's not just the M's. So I'm even going to take away that black outline in the back there. And for those of you not familiar, I'm using Adobe Illustrator for this. So what I want to do now is right click it and simplify it a little bit. And then when I go to export this, export as, we'll just call it Mountain Maker 3. I want to change to convert to outlines. And from there we can just click OK. So now when we go back into Orca Slicer, we can add our primitive again, SVG, choose our Mountain Maker 3. Scale it down, get it into place. We'll assemble these again. I'll change the color so we can once again see it a little bit better. And then I can change this to a negative part. Right click it and hit Mesh Boolean. Now you see we've got our little cutout in the top of this piece. Why it doesn't work with the regular SVG, the styled SVG, I don't know. And I tried this multiple times and eventually came to this conclusion that this is what we're going to have to do. Now, the whole reason we're using Orca Slicer for this is simply because it allows you to perform processes like this, and they're really easy to do. You can try to do something similar in software like Fusion, but from what I've found, it doesn't work the greatest in my experience. There's a lot of editing and a lot of functions that you have to do. And then when we go to do that little cut operation there, because of the SVG file, because we're modifying an existing SVG from this original file, it's empty on the inside. So it's not a solid body. And when you cut it out, you end up just exposing the internal structure of the part, which doesn't allow us to do what we want to do. If we design this checker piece, which in reality is not a hard part to design, we wouldn't run into any of those issues. This would be a little bit smoother. But because I want to maintain consistency across the parts that I've used, I decided to use the same checkers piece here. So then I can right click this, export it as one STL. Now I can open up Blueprint Studio, and you'll see I was attempting to do this process inside of Blueprint Studio, but I wasn't quite figuring that one out. I'm sure they've got an operation that does something similar, but I'm familiar with Orca Slicer, so that's what I used. So then we can come into here and come up to the top right-hand corner and click Import. We've saved it as Checker M. So now when we import it into Blueprint Studio, you can see we have our M on there. And at this point, all I'm going to do is grid when cloning. We'll do 12 of them. So we'll do 4 in the X direction and 3 in the Y direction. Command A on Mac to select them all and then bring them into the center. Now I only did 12 because that's what I did originally for the crown checkers. We'll go to Supports, Auto Support, and Generate. Now the reason I'm doing it like this is because I don't need it to angle it in any sort of weird purpose. I just want it to print flat like that. Then I would go to Slice. All of these settings are just fine for me. So this is probably one of those occasions where I won't do the one-click slice operation. I want to be the one to tell it which orientation these are printing in. Otherwise, we're going to add a whole bunch of unnecessary supports and print time to this little process here, which is, again, not necessary. Then we can open the project, view slice files, and I will click that button there and send it via LAN. So you can see we have a job ready here to start on the printer. So the only thing left to do now is go down to the printer and press start. So about 2 hours later, all of the prints are done on the resin printer. They're all washed and cured. All that's left now is to paint them. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any yellow. I used blue on the other ones, but I do have some of this bright and shiny gold metallic from Rust-Oleum, so we're gonna give that a go. So I'm gonna let that first side dry, flip it over, and then we'll paint the top side. Well, that about does it for this one. If you want to pick up the checker files for yourself or the Connect 4 game, I will have both of those files linked down in the description below. Super happy with how these came out, both the one that we remodeled and the original one that we downloaded to begin with. Seeing these prints with no layer lines whatsoever, without any sort of post-processing or smoothing, still blows my mind, so definitely got more resin printing content coming up for you. Let me know what you want to see down in the comments below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. See ya.